The kid actually called me at 9 p.m. on a Thursday, asking if I could help him prepare some documentation for the Meridian deal. 29 years old, Wharton MBA, trying to get me to fabricate evidence that he'd managed a $22 million negotiation he couldn't even pronounce the technical terms for. That's when I knew Tyler Caldwell had just made the biggest mistake of his privileged life. My name is Rick Brennan. I'm 52 years old, and for the past 18 years I've been what people in the enterprise software industry call the deal architect. Not because I'm some smooth-talking salesman, but because I engineer partnerships that others can't even imagine. I've built Apex Technologies from a struggling mid-size firm into a major player, negotiating deals worth over $280 million along the way. They also call me the infrastructure whisperer at industry conferences, which sounds like marketing nonsense until you realize I have 47 Fortune 500 CTOs on speed dial who trust my technical judgment. When these executives have problems that keep them awake at night, legacy system migrations, zero downtime requirements, compliance nightmares, they don't call consultants. They call me. I live in a 3-bedroom house in Westchester County, drive a practical 2019 Honda Accord, and have spent nearly 2 decades building a reputation that opens doors from Boston to Silicon Valley. You know how some industries run on relationships? Enterprise software runs on competence, and competence that's been proven over and over again. That's what I bring to the table. The story I'm about to tell you happened between February and July of 2024, and it taught me that sometimes the most devastating betrayals come from people you'd never suspect. If you've ever dealt with workplace politics or watched some entitled kid try to take credit for your work, you're going to understand exactly what I went through. It started with Meridian Industries, a Fortune 500 manufacturing conglomerate that needed to modernize their entire IT infrastructure. Their CTO, Laura Martinez, reached out to me personally after seeing my presentation at the Enterprise Architecture Summit in Chicago. The potential contract was worth $22 million over 3 years, the largest single deal in Apex's history. Now, what made this deal special wasn't just the money. Meridian needed to migrate 847 terabytes of legacy manufacturing data from mainframe systems that were older than most of their employees. Zero downtime requirement. 47 distribution centers across North America, real-time data replication protocols, custom API gateways that could handle automotive compliance requirements while maintaining flexibility for their consumer goods division. This wasn't some off-the-shelf implementation you could hand off to junior developers. This was architectural engineering that required understanding manufacturing workflows, federal compliance standards, and enterprise security protocols. The kind of solution that gets presented at technical conferences and defines industry best practices. Laura Martinez and I had worked together on smaller projects over the past 2 years. She knew my background, trusted my technical judgment, and specifically requested me for this engagement. In our industry, that kind of personal trust is everything. When a Fortune 500 CTO puts her reputation behind your architecture, you don't take that lightly. For 4 months, from February through May, I lived and breathed this project. 16-hour days became normal. I flew to Detroit 8 times, spending weeks on site understanding their manufacturing processes, interviewing plant managers, mapping data flows that had never been properly documented. I personally designed microservices architecture on 23 whiteboards, creating database sharding strategies that would revolutionize how they handled peak production periods. The technical complexity was staggering. We're talking about real-time monitoring of automotive assembly lines while simultaneously managing consumer goods inventory across multiple time zones. The disaster recovery procedures alone required custom protocols that didn't exist in any textbook. This was the kind of architecture that would be studied in graduate programs. During those months, my wife Amy saw me maybe 2 hours a day. She'd given up her marketing director position 3 years earlier to support my career advancement, understanding that opportunities like this don't come along often. We had our daughter's medical school fund to consider, 8 years left on our mortgage, and my parents' increasing healthcare costs. Every major deal wasn't just about professional success. It was about securing our family's future. Amy would find me in the home office at midnight, surrounded by technical specifications and compliance documents, and she never complained. She understood that this deal could change everything for us, for Apex, for everyone whose livelihood depended on the company's success. The negotiations with Meridian were brutal. Their procurement team questioned every deliverable, every timeline, every warranty clause. I spent countless nights in Detroit hotel rooms revising contracts, adjusting pricing models, coordinating with our legal team back in New York. Laura's infrastructure team would call at all hours with technical questions about load balancing strategies and failover procedures. These weren't conversations you could fake your way through. When Laura asked about database optimization for their Chicago facility's peak production periods, she expected detailed technical responses about indexing strategies and query performance. When her security team needed clarification on our encryption protocols, they wanted to see actual code samples and compliance certifications. Throughout all this, Tyler Caldwell would occasionally wander into my office asking for updates. "How's that big manufacturing deal coming along?" he'd say, leaning against my doorframe with his designer coffee and that Ivy League confidence that mistakes credentials for competence. Tyler was our CEO's 29-year-old son, hired 8 months earlier as Director of Business Development with a corner office, $145,000 salary, and zero meaningful responsibilities. I kept him informed as a courtesy, sharing general progress updates about timeline milestones and client satisfaction, never imagining he was taking notes for reasons other than company interest. The kid drove a red Tesla Model 3, spent most afternoons networking at expensive Manhattan restaurants, and showed up to maybe half our Monday morning meetings. Tyler represented everything that frustrated experienced professionals about entitled newcomers. Here I was, designing enterprise solutions that would revolutionize manufacturing IT infrastructure, while he posted LinkedIn articles about synergistic partnerships and disruptive innovation. I had Fortune 500 CTOs calling my personal cell phone for technical advice. Tyler had Daddy's protection and an MBA from Wharton. On May 18, 2024, I finally closed the Meridian deal. Laura Martinez signed the contract at 3:47 p.m. Eastern Time, and I immediately called CEO Bill Caldwell to share the news. "Rick, this is incredible," he said. "This changes everything for Apex. This is the kind of deal that defines companies." I drove home that evening thinking about the promotion I'd been promised, the bonus structure we discussed, and the recognition that would finally acknowledge my contribution to Apex's transformation from struggling mid-size firm to industry leader. 3 days later, everything changed, and I discovered that in corporate America, sometimes your biggest threats come from inside your own building. On May 21st, Bill Caldwell called me into his office at 9 a.m. sharp. I walked in expecting to discuss my promotion and implementation timeline for Meridian. Instead, I found Tyler sitting across from his father's desk, wearing that smug smile that should have been my first warning sign. "Rick, sit down," Bill said, his tone unusually formal. "I wanted to personally thank you for all your support on the Meridian deal. Tyler has done an exceptional job leading this negotiation, and I'm proud of the initiative he's shown." The words hit me like ice water. "I'm sorry, what?" Tyler leaned forward with practiced confidence. "Dad, I told you Rick was being modest about his role. He provided valuable technical assistance during the process, especially with the implementation details." Valuable technical assistance. Implementation details. I had spent 4 months designing enterprise architecture that would revolutionize manufacturing IT infrastructure. I had missed my daughter's college graduation because I was in Detroit, finalizing database optimization strategies. I had sacrificed countless evenings with Amy, working until midnight on compliance protocols and disaster recovery procedures. "Bill," I said carefully, "I think there's some confusion here. I was the lead architect on Meridian from day one. I have documentation of every client interaction, every technical specification I designed, every meeting with Laura Martinez's team." "Rick," Bill interrupted, "I appreciate your enthusiasm, but Tyler has been keeping me updated throughout the process. He's shown real leadership potential, and frankly, this is exactly the kind of strategic thinking we need from the next generation." I looked at Tyler. He was examining his fingernails like we were discussing office supply budgets instead of the deal that would define Apex's future for the next decade. You know that look some people get when they're absolutely certain they've outsmarted everyone in the room? That was Tyler right then. "I'm happy to share the recognition, Rick," he said with fake generosity. "Team effort and all that. Share the recognition." For architecture, I had designed on 23 whiteboards while he was posting motivational quotes on LinkedIn. But here's what really got me. This wasn't just about stealing credit. Tyler was positioning himself to manage the entire client relationship going forward, ensuring that any future success would be attributed entirely to him. "I'd like to see the documentation showing Tyler's involvement in the technical design," I said, keeping my voice level. Bill's expression hardened. "Rick, I don't like your tone. Are you questioning my son's integrity? That was the moment everything clicked. This wasn't a misunderstanding or communication breakdown. This was calculated theft, and Bill was either actively helping or willfully blind to what his son had done. Tyler had been gathering intelligence from our casual conversations and presenting my progress reports as evidence of his own strategic oversight. Of course not, I replied. I'm simply trying to understand the communication structure. The communication structure runs through Tyler, Bill said firmly. He's been managing client relationships at the executive level while you handled the technical implementation. Different skill sets, Rick. That's why successful companies have teams. Executive level management. 18 years of building strategic partnerships, and I was being reduced to technical implementation. The kid who couldn't explain basic API architecture was suddenly the relationship manager for our most important client. Tyler finally spoke up with that Ivy League confidence that makes you wonder how some people function in the real world. Rick, I understand this transition might feel challenging, but there's a real opportunity here for professional growth. Maybe taking on more of a supporting role going forward. A supporting role. In the company, I had helped transform from struggling mid-sized firm to industry leader, reporting to someone who thought database sharding was probably a phishing technique. I need some time to process this, I said, standing up. Actually, Rick, Bill said, we should discuss your future here at Apex. Tyler has brought some concerns to my attention about your attitude lately. Resistance to new leadership, reluctance to adapt to our evolving corporate structure. Something cold settled in my stomach. What kind of concerns? Tyler sighed like this pained him to discuss. I hate bringing this up, but there have been some client communication issues. Laura Martinez mentioned to me that she felt you were sometimes inflexible during technical discussions. She specifically requested that I take a more active role in managing the relationship. Complete lies. Laura Martinez had never spoken to Tyler. I had her personal cell number, her direct email, and she'd invited me to speak at next month's Enterprise Architecture Conference. But Tyler was betting his word would carry more weight than mine, and judging by Bill's expression, that bet was paying off. I think we should call Laura to clarify this, I said. That won't be necessary, Bill replied quickly. We've already discussed the situation with Meridian's executive team. They're comfortable with Tyler serving as their primary contact going forward. Now I understood the full scope of Tyler's strategy. He wasn't just stealing credit for completed work. He was positioning himself as the ongoing relationship owner, ensuring that any future revenue, any expansion opportunities, any industry recognition would flow directly to him. It was actually impressive in its calculated audacity, if you could overlook the complete absence of professional ethics. So where does that leave me? I asked. Bill and Tyler exchanged a look that told me everything. We think it might be best if you took some time off, Bill said. Clear your head. Think about whether Apex is still the right fit for your career goals. We'll call it voluntary leave. Voluntary leave. Corporate speak for, we're firing you but don't want the legal complications. And if I don't think leave is necessary, then we'll have to discuss other options, Bill said. Apex is evolving, Rick. We need people who can evolve with us. I nodded slowly. I understand completely. Walking out of that office, I knew I'd just been fired by the company I'd spent nearly 2 decades building. But I also knew something Tyler and his father didn't realize. Laura Martinez had never requested leadership changes. Meridian's executive team had no idea who Tyler Caldwell was. And I had every email thread, every contract revision, every meeting recording stored in my personal files. Tyler Caldwell had just made the biggest mistake of his privileged life, and he didn't even know it yet. That weekend, I methodically organized 18 years of professional documentation in my home office. Every client interaction, every technical specification, every contract negotiation was stored across 3 external hard drives and backed up to secure cloud servers. Amy found me there Sunday evening, surrounded by printed emails and legal documents. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Building a case," I replied. You see, Tyler didn't understand how the enterprise software business actually works. It's not about family connections or smooth presentations. It's about relationships built on demonstrated competence, documented through years of successful project delivery. And I was about to give him a masterclass in how that world really operates. The most damaging evidence was a series of emails between Laura Martinez and myself from the previous week. She had specifically mentioned her excitement about working with me personally on the implementation phase, referencing technical conversations about load balancing strategies and disaster recovery protocols that had never included Tyler. More importantly, she had copied me on internal Meridian communications discussing Rick Brennan's innovative microservices architecture and his deep understanding of our manufacturing compliance requirements. Tyler had claimed Laura requested his involvement. The email trail proved she didn't even know he existed. Monday morning, May 24th, I called Laura directly. Laura, this is Rick Brennan. I wanted to touch base about the implementation timeline we discussed for the database migration. Rick, perfect timing, she said. I was just telling my infrastructure team how impressed we've been with your hybrid cloud design. The way you mapped our automotive compliance requirements to the consumer goods flexibility needs. That's exactly the kind of architectural thinking we were hoping for. When can we schedule the kickoff meeting? Actually, there's been a personnel change on our side. Tyler Caldwell will be taking over as your primary contact. Long pause. I'm sorry, who? Tyler Caldwell. He's Bill Caldwell's son, our director of business development. Rick, I've never heard this name before. Are you being reassigned to another project? Something like that. Well, that's concerning. We specifically chose Apex because of your track record and technical expertise. Our board approved this contract based on your architectural presentation and your guaranteed involvement in the implementation. If you're not going to be managing this relationship, we need to discuss whether this partnership still makes sense. That was exactly what I had hoped to hear. I understand your concerns, Laura. Perhaps you should speak directly with Bill Caldwell about the transition. I think I will. Laura called Bill that afternoon. I know because she immediately called me afterward to share her confusion about the conversation, and her tone had shifted from professional concern to genuine bewilderment. Rick, I just spoke with your CEO. He assured me that his son has been managing our relationship from the beginning, but I have no record of any interactions with this Tyler person. He also mentioned you've been having performance issues, which frankly contradicts everything I've observed over the past 4 months. Performance issues. Bill was already rewriting history to justify Tyler's promotion and my removal. In the enterprise software world, your reputation is everything, and he was trying to damage mine to protect his son's fabricated credentials. He mentioned something about client communication problems and resistance to new leadership. Rick, I've worked with you on 3 different projects over 2 years. You designed the architecture that saved us $6 million on our last data center consolidation. What's really going on there? I chose my words carefully. There have been some internal restructuring decisions that I don't entirely agree with. Well, I'm not comfortable moving forward without you involved. We've scheduled a conference call for Wednesday with Bill, his son, and me to clarify the situation. I think you should be on that call as well. Wednesday's conference call on May 26th was corporate theater at its finest. Bill opened with his standard executive cheerleading routine, praising Tyler's visionary leadership and strategic oversight of the Meridian partnership. Tyler delivered a practiced speech about seamless transitions and elevated service delivery that sounded like he'd memorized it from a business school case study. Laura listened politely for exactly 3 minutes and 12 seconds before cutting them off. I was taking notes. I appreciate the introduction, but I need to address some confusion. Tyler, you mentioned that you've been my primary point of contact throughout the negotiation process. Can you tell me about our conversation regarding the database migration timeline? Silence. Complete, dead silence for what felt like an eternity. Tyler cleared his throat. Well, Laura, I believe Rick handled most of the technical discussions while I focused on the strategic framework and executive oversight. I see. And what about the pricing adjustments we discussed for the Chicago facility integration? Another pause. You could hear him shuffling papers through the phone. I'd have to review my notes on that specific conversation. What about the compliance requirements we discussed for the automotive division? The ones that required custom API development? Again, I think Rick was more involved in those operational implementation details. Laura's voice took on that sharp edge that Fortune 500 executives get when someone's wasting their time. Tyler, I'm asking about conversations that you claim to have had with me personally. If you were managing this relationship at the executive level, surely you'd remember discussing our largest technical challenge, the real-time data replication protocols for 47 distribution centers. Tyler was drowning, and everyone on the call knew it. Laura, I think there might be some confusion about the division of responsibilities here. The only confusion is why I'm being told that someone I've never spoken to has been managing a $22 million contract negotiation. Bill jumped in to rescue his son. Laura, I think we need to clarify the communication structure here. Tyler has been providing strategic oversight and executive guidance while Rick handled the technical implementation and day-to-day client interactions. Strategic oversight of conversations that never happened, Laura replied with ice-cold precision. Here's what Tyler and Bill didn't understand about dealing with Fortune 500 CTOs. These people didn't get to their positions by accepting vague explanations and corporate doublespeak. Laura Martinez had been in enterprise technology for 15 years, managing billion-dollar IT budgets and vendor relationships. She could smell incompetence from 3 time zones away. The call ended with Laura requesting a detailed timeline of all interactions between Apex and Meridian, along with documentation of Tyler's specific contributions to the negotiation process. She gave them 48 hours to provide this information. I need to see email records, meeting notes, technical specifications, anything that demonstrates Mr. Caldwell's involvement in this project, she said, because from my perspective, this is the first time I've heard his name. That evening, Tyler called me directly. His confidence from the meeting had completely evaporated. Rick, we need to talk. I'm on voluntary leave, remember? Look, there's been some confusion about roles and responsibilities. Maybe we can work together to clarify things for the client. What kind of clarification did you have in mind? Well, you obviously have detailed knowledge of the technical conversations and client interactions. Maybe you could help me prepare some documentation that shows my strategic involvement in the project. He was actually asking me to help him fabricate evidence of work he had never done. The audacity was breathtaking, but also desperate. Tyler was finally realizing that stealing credit for completed work was one thing. Proving you'd actually done the work was something else entirely. Tyler, I think you should handle this on your own. You're the director of business development, after all. Rick, I know you're upset about the organizational changes, but we can work this out. There might be a place for you in the new structure. The new structure where I report to you, it doesn't have to be adversarial. We both want what's best for Apex. What's best for Apex is honest leadership and competent management. I'm trying to help you here, Rick. No, Tyler, you're trying to save yourself. I hung up knowing that Tyler Caldwell was about to discover the difference between stealing credit and actually earning it. Laura Martinez wasn't some middle manager who could be impressed with buzzwords and MBA credentials. She was a Fortune 500 CTO who had built her career on technical expertise and operational excellence. Tyler had 48 hours to provide documentation of work that existed only in his imagination. And I was about to watch him fail in the most spectacular way possible. Tyler missed his 48-hour deadline, completely missed it. On Friday morning, May 28th, Laura Martinez called Bill Caldwell directly and informed him that Meridian Industries was suspending the contract pending a full review of Apex's management structure and communication protocols. She also mentioned that she would be sharing her concerns with other Fortune 500 CTOs in her professional network. In the enterprise software world, reputation travels faster than office gossip. By the first week of June, 3 other companies that had been considering Apex for upcoming projects had quietly moved their business elsewhere. Word was spreading through industry channels that Apex Technologies had misrepresented their leadership team and couldn't be trusted to deliver on major commitments. My old friend Greg Patterson, CTO at a competing firm, called me Tuesday morning. Rick, hearing some strange rumors about leadership changes at Apex. Everything okay over there? There have been some internal restructuring decisions that I'm not entirely comfortable with. Well, heads up. Laura Martinez mentioned to our procurement team that Apex tried to switch project managers midstream without notice. Said the replacement couldn't answer basic technical questions about enterprise architecture. That's not good for anybody in this industry. You see, that's how the enterprise tech world actually operates. We all know each other. Laura and Greg serve on the same Enterprise Architecture Council. They present at the same conferences, golf at the same country club. When a major CTO has concerns about a vendor's competence, that information gets shared over private dinners and weekend phone calls. Tyler thought he could fake his way through technical conversations, but this industry is too small and too connected for that kind of deception. The ripple effects were devastating. By mid-June, Apex had lost 4 potential contracts worth a combined $38 million. Companies that had been in advanced negotiations suddenly developed concerns about our management stability and technical capabilities. Our sales team was fielding questions they couldn't answer about leadership changes and project management protocols. Bill Caldwell called me on June 8th. His voice was different this time. Strained instead of authoritative. Desperate instead of confident. Rick, we need to talk. Can you come in today? I'm on voluntary leave, remember? Rick, please, the Meridian situation has become complicated. How complicated? They're threatening to cancel the contract and pursue legal action for fraudulent misrepresentation. They claim we lied about our management structure and project leadership. I let the silence hang for a moment, thinking about Amy's sacrificed career, our daughter's medical school fund, the 18 years I'd invested in building this company. That does sound complicated. Look, I think there may have been some miscommunication about Tyler's role in the negotiation. Maybe we moved too fast with the leadership transition. Miscommunication. That's what we were calling deliberate fraud now. Rick, I need you to call Laura Martinez and smooth this over. You have a relationship with her. She trusts your technical judgment. She trusts me because I've never lied to her about my capabilities or credentials. Nobody lied to anybody. There was just some confusion about project responsibilities. Bill, your son claimed he managed a 4-month negotiation that he had zero involvement in. He told Laura Martinez that she personally requested his leadership, which never happened. He couldn't answer basic questions about database architecture that I designed from scratch. That's not confusion. That's fraud. Rick, please. I'm asking for your help here. The same help you offered me when you fired me to protect Tyler's fabricated credentials? You weren't fired. You took voluntary leave. We both know exactly what that meant. Long pause. What would it take to get you back? Full reinstatement with public acknowledgement of my role in the Meridian deal and a formal apology from both of you. Rick, be reasonable here. I am being reasonable. I'm asking for the truth. I can offer you your old position back with a 20% raise. What about Tyler? He'll continue in his current role, but with more clearly defined responsibilities and proper oversight. So he keeps his corner office and his $145,000 salary after attempting to steal a $22 million deal and lying to Fortune 500 clients. Rick, he's my son. And that's exactly the problem with this company. I hung up knowing that Bill Caldwell would never hold his son accountable, which meant Tyler would continue making decisions that would destroy the company I had helped build from nothing. On June 25th, I received a call from Howard Pierce, Apex's board chairman. Rick, the board would like to meet with you this afternoon. We have some questions about the Meridian situation. The emergency board meeting was held in the same conference room where I had presented the Meridian proposal just 4 months earlier. 5 board members, Bill Caldwell and Tyler, sat around the mahogany table. The atmosphere was tense enough to require a knife. Rick, Howard said, we understand there have been some internal disputes regarding the Meridian contract. We'd like to hear your perspective on what actually happened. I spent 35 minutes walking them through the complete timeline, supported by printed emails, meeting recordings, and client communications. I showed them Tyler's complete absence from the negotiation process, his false claims to Laura Martinez, and the resulting contract suspension. I also presented documented evidence of the impact on Apex's reputation and the 4 additional contracts we'd lost as a direct result. When I finished, Howard turned to Tyler with the expression of someone who just discovered termites in his foundation. Do you have a response to these allegations? Tyler had clearly prepared for this moment, probably with coaching from expensive consultants. I think Rick is understandably frustrated about the recent organizational changes. Sometimes when experienced employees feel their authority is being redistributed, they can become territorial about client relationships and resistant to new leadership structures. That's not an answer to my question, Howard replied sharply. Did you or did you not claim to have personally managed the Meridian negotiation? I provided strategic oversight and executive guidance throughout the process, coordinating with Rick on technical implementation details. Show me one email, one meeting note, one document that proves your involvement in this negotiation. Tyler couldn't, because no such documentation existed anywhere. Tyler, another board member asked, can you explain the database sharding strategy you discussed with Meridian's infrastructure team? Silence. Complete devastating silence. Detail the load balancing approach for their 47 distribution centers. More silence. You could hear the air conditioning humming. Describe the disaster recovery procedures you designed for their automotive division compliance requirements. Tyler finally spoke, his voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. I'd need to review my technical documentation. You mean Rick's technical documentation? I counted 47 seconds of absolute silence. 47 seconds of a 29-year-old MBA realizing that Daddy's protection couldn't save him from his own incompetence. That's when I knew we had reached checkmate. The board voted unanimously to terminate Tyler Caldwell's employment effective immediately. They also voted to remove Bill Caldwell as CEO, citing his failure to maintain proper oversight and his complicity in misrepresenting company capabilities to major clients. They offered me the CEO position that same afternoon. I accepted. By the end of July 2024, I had managed to rebuild most of Apex's damaged relationships. Laura Martinez agreed to resume our partnership under a modified contract worth $18 million, with additional performance bonuses tied to implementation milestones. 3 of the other clients returned after seeing the management changes and accountability measures we had implemented. Tyler Caldwell's LinkedIn profile now describes him as an entrepreneurial consultant exploring new opportunities in strategic business development. He's been exploring for quite a while now. Turns out, when you can't explain basic technical concepts and your only professional reference is a father who was fired for enabling your incompetence, the job market becomes surprisingly challenging. Sometimes the best revenge isn't something you actively do to your enemies. Sometimes it's simply creating the right circumstances for them to face the natural consequences of their own choices. Tyler thought he could steal 18 years of relationship building and technical expertise. Instead, he learned that reputation and competence aren't inherited through family connections. They're earned through years of delivering results and maintaining professional integrity. And once lost in this industry, trust is almost impossible to recover. In enterprise software, your word and your technical capabilities are everything. Tyler Caldwell will never be trusted with major client relationships again. If you enjoyed this story of professional justice and workplace accountability, I hope it reminds you that competence and integrity usually triumph over privilege and entitlement. You just have to be patient enough to let incompetence expose itself. Sometimes the most satisfying victories come from simply telling the truth and letting the chips fall where they may.